Hey friends, this is Hardy with Ninja Everyday, and I'm back with another installment of the Masters of Toshindo interview series. Today I'm really excited to interview a great friend, one of my most influential teachers, and an excellent practitioner of this martial art, Ian Pyotoshi Pusick from the Boulder Quest Center. Mr. Pusick, thanks for spending some time with us today.
No, it's my pleasure.
I wanted to ask you several questions, sort of starting with your history of martial arts. Could you tell us how and when you got involved in martial arts and how you wound up in Toshindo specifically?
So I started back in '85
Okay.
in Kung Fu because I grew up watching Kung Fu theater and David Carradine and the Kung Fu series. I had read Stephen K. Hayes' Onshu's books back in those days, but there was no place to train. So I wanted to do martial arts. So I started with Kung Fu because it just seemed to have the full package like what I was reading in Onshu's books.
So you sort of picked Kung Fu because it was the closest thing that you...
It's what I thought would be the closest.
Okay.
It couldn't have been any further from the truth.
Okay.
So that was kind of it was an interesting journey. And then I had the fortune of the military crossing paths with a gentleman that actually had done some of the early seminars with Onshu back in '86. And he shared it while we were going through a intelligence course together, what he had kind of experienced. And I was like, wow, this is what I wanted. It looked kind of cool in the books, but feeling it really drove home, no, this is real. This is what I've been looking for. And started training on and off with that gentleman. Military transferred me to another location. I trained with a more senior person that had trained with Onshu, and just really fell in love with what I was experiencing. And kind of a unique experience because I was in the military, got sent to Europe in the Cold War, and very different way of learning this art, because as a serviceman in the Cold War, we knew that if the Russians came across the border, we had seconds of life was all we were going to have. We were sacrificial lambs to slow them down. So I just approached the training in a very visceral approach with Onshu back in those days when I met him. That no, this has got to work for me now, and I'm going to train in a way that most people won't train because I was in the service.
What does that mean to you, though, in a way that you trained in a way that most people would, or in a visceral
Well,
way?
so what I mean by that is I trained in a way that was reckless.
Okay.
Because I didn't have time to let it simmer. I had full medical coverage through the government. If I got injured, I'd still get paid. They'd fix me up, and if they didn't fix me up because it was too bad an injury, they'd compensate me for the injury and send me on my way. So I had some pretty incredible safety nets. Also, I was very young, so I didn't think I would need those safety nets. And I remember being at these seminars, and Onshu would actually make a point of, yeah, don't train the way those guys are training. They might have to use it tomorrow. And I was training with some GSG-9 guys over there in Europe, so the counterterrorists for Germany. So we were kind of playing fast and loose with our experience. And but I wouldn't change that, but I wouldn't share that approach with others.
Sure.
It's just not appropriate.
Who were some of your earlier sort of influential, you spoke about two individuals, influential teachers besides Onshu that got you started?
So I'd say Brent DeMoville, who was one of the gentlemen I trained with down in Texas, was hugely influential in kind of shaping the way I looked at things. He surprised me by sharing, as we were training, that he was a pacifist. And I kind of was taken aback. Well, how are you doing ninjutsu if you're a pacifist? And he shared, he goes, I can't be a pacifist if I don't have an option to do something real. I'm hiding behind that title. So it kind of opened up for me that, wow, here's this human being that believes in the beauty of life. But for him to see that beauty, he has to have another option to choose not to use. So that kind of resonated with me of, well, we're opposite sides of the coin. I'm in the service. I'm willing to sacrifice for my countrymen at all cost without thinking about the ramification. And he kind of opened my eyes to, wow, there's more to life than just this path I was on at the time. So I'd say that Brent DeMoville was very influential, and there's quite a number of people that have influenced me. Brandon Sommerfeld was another one of my teachers. He's since passed. But he was in the service. We were in Fayetteville, North Carolina together, and just kind of his spirit.
What was the name of that dojo in Fayetteville?
So that was the Shugendu Dojo, and initially it was the Shugendu Shibu. And when Brandon became the senior there, it became the Shugendu Dojo. So kind of funny with my backstory of getting involved in the Yamabushi. Now, it all started way back in the early 90s.
So when I was a kid, I was about 15, and I used to go to this little martial arts store right across the street
Yeah,
from
Mr.
that dojo.
Johnson's.
And I would stand and stare out of the window of that martial arts store, trying to see into the window of the school that all of like my early influential teachers came from. So it's really funny to me. So I just wanted to share that.
Small world, small world.
And so you trained in Fayetteville, you trained in Germany. Any other places that you trained when you were in the service?
Yeah, I trained in Hawaii. I was teaching in Hawaii when I was stationed there. I did some work with some Korean Special Forces when I was in Korea, so that was kind of interesting to see their take as I was working some missions there, and got to apply it in Central South America when I was doing counter drug, and really have to say, even when I was in Iraq, the stuff I've learned in this art is why I'm still on the planet.
Is that what keeps you training after all this time?
No, actually, I mean, I came back from Iraq and I was done. I was ready to switch from being the warrior to just going on to a new aspect of life, and I thought I was retired. Wasn't that I was gonna quit Toshindo or martial arts. I was just done. I had done what I wanted to do in my life with that aspect of warriorship. And it was a gentleman that I was working with, Wayne Adams. One night we're working a late shift and had nothing else to do, and got onto martial arts and kind of shared what I did, and he was interested, and I was like, well, I was thinking I was done, but I guess the Bujin is calling me to continue to do this as kind of a life debt for me still being on the planet, and that's why I stayed with it, and kind of hid from public view for a number of years, as you know, as I just kind of dealt with some garbage I had to deal with from overseas. And, it was that one student had me interested.
Yeah, it took that one to get you going again.
And then he found others, and he brought them in, and that's why I find the benefit, and it's really what helped me get over my post-traumatic stress. Was the art, getting back into it, getting back publicly out there with you guys, brought back that joy and allowed that kind of cloud to diminish.
Is there anything that you're currently working on in your training for you?
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of going back to the roots of what got me inspired back in the 80s of this Togakure-ryu. And looking at how at this juncture, at 50 plus years old, I continue to be able to train and stay healthy while I'm training, and have less and less need to do things to people. So that's been what's kind of inspired me, is to look at this very kind of odd approach to self-protection and look at how do I inspire others like Honshu inspired me in the 80s with this kind of Togakure flavor.